Welcome to the beginning of the series where we make a tower defense game, and as you can probably tell, this is going to be in 3D. So yeah, it's going to be a little unique. It's going to be harder than a 2D game, but for sure you can definitely just implement this into a 2D game. It definitely won't be hard at all. It would definitely be easy. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to make this as beginner friendly as possible, but I still expect you to kind of know how to program and code at least a little. Obviously, if you're new to Godot, that's completely fine. I'll be going over everything. But yeah, so in this video, we'll be making the player and a basic little, I guess, map, if you want to call it. Okay, let's just get started straight away. Okay, so the first step is we want to set up our file system. So what we want to do is we want to right click anywhere over here and click new folder, type the folder name, and then you want to press OK. Yeah, I'd recommend just creating the same folders I have. There will definitely be folders added on as we go along this series, but yeah, I'm hoping in the next video, if you're wondering about that, we'll be getting the enemies to follow a path and spawn in, or basic spawning in system. But yeah, anyways, you'll notice you'll be prompted with like a create root node option. Just press 3D scene and you're gonna press Control S to save. Let me do this with you. So Control S, and you want to find your maps folder, create a folder called map1, then press OK, and then go in that folder. You want to rename this file to map1 and then click save. And if you want to know how to rename nodes, it's pretty simple. You just gotta double click and then type in what you want. Obviously renaming nodes isn't that big of a deal, but if you want your project to be organized, which it should be, then I recommend doing that. Anyways, so let's go over what scenes and nodes are. To begin with, nodes are the building blocks of your game, and each one of them, as you can see, these are all the nodes. There's a bunch of them, and each of them has its own kind of feature, and they have their own functions they can use. They have their own properties. But if you notice, this is kind of like the node tree kind of has like a drop down menu, and all the nodes under like the parent node, I guess you could say, inherit those properties. So you can see that the node 3D has transform, visibility, process, editor description, and our mesh instance, which I'll show you guys how to add in a bit, also has those properties at the bottom. So on your root node, you want to click Control A or this plus button, and you want to type in mesh instance, and then hit create. At first, you won't get anything, but it's fairly simple. You just want to click on this button, click plane mesh, click on this little picture kind of thing, and you want to change the size to 100 by 100. And since this is a plane, it will not have any Z size. Alright, but this is just a visual representation for the player of the game. Obviously, we want representation of this floor in for the game, I guess. So to do this, we need to add a collision shape and a static body. So it's fairly simple. You want to click on the mesh instance, click this button at the top, and click create trim static body. Then you want to go to project settings, go to general, 3D, physics, and you want to fill in these layers. And I'll go over exactly what these are going to be used for, and there will definitely be more layers added on, probably. Once you got that, you can press close and click on the static body 3D. So you have a collision property, and there's a layer and a mask. So you can hover over these and you can see what they do, but basically the layer is what defines the static body. So this static body is currently on layer 1, and the mask is basically what layers it looks for. So as of right now, it will look for objects that are on the layers 1, 2, and 3, and this will allow it to collide and collide basically with any object on any of these layers. You could also think of this as the game's representation of where everything is, because obviously we can see the floor, but a mesh isn't going to tell the game where the floor is. And this allows our player, which we'll add in a second, to actually stay on top of the floor instead of falling into this huge abyss. Alright. The last step is you want to click these 3 dots, and there'll be like an add sun and add environment button. This just allows our game to look like our editor when we actually run it. So you have a sun and shadows and everything. Alright, then you want to click this add a new scene button, and you want to click other node and character body. That's what you want to type in and press create. You can rename this to player if you'd like, and then you want to create a mesh, but the mesh will be a capsule mesh, and I didn't change any of the radius or heights. If you want to do that, then you can. Then we're going to add a collision shape. This is another node, and we're going to set the shape to a capsule shape 2, and since we didn't change any of the default values, this will fit perfectly onto our player. The next step is adding another node 3D onto the root node, which is the character body or player, and you can rename this to neck, and you want to click on the neck, press Ctrl A or the plus button, and type in camera and create. You're gonna wanna raise your neck to match where the player's like line of sight is. So I'm just gonna raise this a bit. And then we want to add a script to our root node or our character body 3D. And to do that, there will be a add script button at the top where my cursor is. And you're going to want to, I guess you could just change the name to player. And you want to click on the file and make sure you're in the player file. We want to keep our project as organized as possible so it's easy to expand upon. And then I forgot to mention, you want to make sure the template says character body. Let me show you what I mean. So make sure the template is character body 3D basic movement. This will make it way faster to actually create our player. And I have a couple extra things added. It's just these and this. Oops. And this. Let's go over what everything does quickly. So hopefully you know what a variable is. And a variable is written in Godot like this. You have the variable, a keyword, and then you want to type the name and then what it's equal to. We also have constants in Godot, and constants are basically variables that cannot be changed in the script. And normally you put these all in caps. So we have speed and jump velocity. I set mine to 10 to make it a little faster, and I'm going to crank this up to like 8.0. Okay, and then we have whatever these are. These are called @onReady variables. They basically, you want to use this annotation whenever you reference a node in your script. And an easy way to reference a node is left clicking on the node, dragging it over your script, and pressing Control. But obviously I already did that. And you could do the same for camera. Yeah, so again, this just gets a reference to our nodes in our scene. Then our gravity variable is set to 9.8 by default because of our project settings. And we have a function ready, which is an inbuilt function that I'm pretty sure all nodes have. And a really useful tip in Godot is you can press Control and you can almost click on everything that's inbuilt and left click, and documentation will pop up in the editor. So basically, to put it simply, it's basically this function ready is called when the game is run, and when it is like started, we're gonna set our mouse mode equal to a mode that it's invisible and it's locked in the sensor. And in function input, this is also another inbuilt function. Basically, it just it's called whenever you press something on your keyboard or you move your mouse or click on it. And event is basically what happened. So if I press W, then the event will be the key W. So right here we're checking if our event is a type called input event mouse motion. So if we're moving our mouse, we want to rotate our neck on the y-axis by our mouse's x coordinate on the screen times 0.01. That's basically our mouse sensitivity. And we're going to do the same for the x, or we're going to rotate the camera on the x-axis by the y of coordinate of our mouse. Then we're going to clamp our camera to a certain degree because we don't want our camera to rotate 360 degrees. So basically this is a method where you pass in the property you want to clamp and then the values you don't want it to surpass. So we don't want it to go past negative 30 degrees and 60 degrees. And we'll set our rotation.x to that. And in a physics process, this is what automatically came with your script. You'll notice a few things different. The first and major one is you want to change, or you want to add neck.transform.basis. And let's quickly go to project settings and input map. Alright, so here, this is where we define what keybinds are existent in our game. So you can type in whatever you want. So forward, and then you click add. You click this little button on the right next to the name, and you can press whatever button you want to set it to. So if I want to go right, I want to press A to do that. So I press A, and it'll automatically set it. And you want to have right, left, forward, back, and jump. And make sure they all have the corresponding keybind. Anyways, let's go over what this does. So physics process is a function that's called on each physics kind of like frame, and it passes delta as a parameter, and delta is basically the time between the last frame and the current frame. It's kind of confusing if I'm being honest, but yeah, you basically use it to smooth out in this case, it will be our velocity, so it doesn't look choppy, and this way it will also run on the same speed the player's like computer is kind of running at, or the game is running at. And there's an inbuilt method called isOnFloor, and this is part of the character body 3D, which is why we have the extends character body 3D to let our script know that it has these methods, or it can use these methods. So basically, if we're not on the floor, we're gonna add, or we're gonna subtract gravity times delta onto velocity.y, and velocity.y is exactly what it says. It's our velocity on the y-axis. And velocity is obviously used to determine which direction we're moving, if we're moving, and like how fast we're moving, stuff like that. So as it says, we're handling jump on this part. This part tells us, or it lets us know if we press jump. And if we're on the floor, then we're gonna add, or we're gonna set velocity.y equal to jump velocity, which is our constant. Also make sure to change the keybind name. And we'll be using this a lot to like kind of figure out where we're placing our towers and all that stuff. So I recommend getting used to that. And there's two types of like is action just pressed and is action, I can't find it. Is action pressed? So is action pressed is basically if you hold it down, it will keep on firing. If action just pressed is called it will only call once, even if you're holding down the button. So obviously we don't want to check if we're jumping as long as we're pressing our spacebar. We only want to check it once, and that is when the first time our spacebar is pressed. Okay, so we can delete this because we're going to do that anyways, this comment. And if you want to comment in Godot, you just do a hashtag. Anyways, another trick is you can do Control K to toggle comments. I'd recommend changing all the whatever the default thing is to your actual keybinds. And what getVector does is it basically, or actually I should explain first that input direction is basically an X and Y. So it's like a coordinate. It'll have an X value and a Y value. And getVector, depending on what key you press, it will return either 1 or -1. If you press both, it will cancel out. And yeah, so right and left will obviously be on the X part of input direction, and forward and back would be on the Y part. Then we're gonna create this new variable called direction, and we're gonna multiply our input direction by our basically where we're looking, and then we're gonna normalize it, which is basically just converting it to like unit lengths. You can see if it doesn't feel like working. Anyways, if anything is pressed, basically, then where our velocity is equal to our direction.x times speed, and velocity.z is equal to our direction.z times speed, which is our other constant. This will allow us to move in the direction we want. And if we're not pressing anything, we obviously don't want to not be able to move. So we want like forces still being applied to us, and that's why we use move toward, our velocity, and then our speed. This is again a inbuilt method. And then we call move and slide. This actually lets us move. And that's practically it. Except I forgot one thing. You want to click on your player and make sure your layer sorry, and mask are set to the right thing. So you want it to be on the player layer, and you want it to detect the world, and that's it. Because our enemies, we obviously don't want to interfere with that, because it is a tower defense game. And the last step is to instance your player scene into our map scene. To do that, you can click this button, which is right next to the plus, or you can do Control Shift A and then double click on this player scene. And you're gonna want to move it a little bit higher because otherwise it's gonna clip through the floor. Now we can test it out. So when you press this play button over here, run project or F5, it's gonna prompt you with like a main, like select main scene or whatever. Just do select current and make sure you're on map 1. So you can see I can move, I can jump, and I can't move my camera past a certain angle. And let's change our ground or our floor to a different color. So if you click on the mesh instance 3D and you click on this little image, click material, standard material, and you'll get a bunch of more properties. So I'm not going to go over exactly everything, but the main thing is we can change the color of the floor by clicking albedo and setting our color, and there will be a complete color wheel that pops up. And set it to whatever you'd like. And another cool thing is like you can add a texture onto this, and I'd recommend it because it's kind of trippy to move on like a huge plane, because you can't really tell if you're moving if it's the same color and nothing is changing on it. So let's just again try it out. So yeah. So again, the second video is going to be how to spawn in the enemies and how to make them follow a certain line. We're also gonna continue the series until we get at least the complete basic components of the game, because I love tower defense games. I think they're pretty cool. And yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, do all that stuff. And the second video of the series, I promise you it won't take that long to come out. I'm sure by the time this one releases, I'll have at least all the footage for it, so I'll just have to edit it. Anyways, thanks for watching.